Okay, this is from March 29th. As you see here, Bill Gates is talking.
Just big picture, before we get into details, how do you see the coronavirus, where we're at right now in the United States, compared to other pandemics the world has faced? I mean, what's the good news? What's the bad news?
Well, this is a terrible pandemic because it spreads human to human in a respiratory way. You can infect somebody when you're still fairly healthy. And there are many things like Ebola that aren't like that. You're flat on your back before you become significantly infectious. So this is kind of the nightmare scenario that in 2015 I gave a Shattuck lecture. I wrote an article for the New England Journal of Medicine and talked about how we needed to invest in new platforms so that we could quickly make diagnostics, make drugs, and make vaccines to stop an epidemic before it got to large numbers.
I know you did some of that investment, but were all the things you called for or hoped would be done, were those done?
Basically, almost none of them. A few countries, our foundation and Wellcome Trust, did fund a vaccine effort called the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness and Innovation. And some of that work is being used to make the vaccines that'll be the first to be ready for coronavirus. But in terms of the testing, the antiviral drugs, not much happened. People, when you don't know that a problem will come around, sometimes people prepare like we prepare for war with war games and putting lots of money into that.
Listen.
But sadly, we'd gone long enough without a disease here in the United States that even though we had Ebola and Zika and SARS, not much happened. The countries that really were affected by SARS actually are the ones that have done the best in this epidemic because they acted when the number of cases were still very, very small.
So Bill, when you give a talk like you did in 2015 and then you see what's happening now, I mean, could you have foreseen the rest of this, the sort of response, the lack of infrastructure, the lack of resources,
Listen.
no apparent strategy really out of the gate? Has that part of it surprised you, given that, I mean, you were sounding the alarm 5 years ago?
Well, one of the things I called for is in the same way we do war games on a regular basis and we say, okay, we're not ready to deal with surprises, I called for us to do germ games and look at, okay, who would talk to the private sector? Who would make sure that testing capacity was raised? Who would make sure that the right people are being tested? Not somebody without symptoms getting tested daily, rather medical personnel who have symptoms who really need to know. And so I wouldn't have predicted exactly how slow and how somewhat chaotic the response has been. But if we had done those simulations, we would have seen some of these flaws in this.
You did do those simulations. Look up Event 201. You did do those simulations in October 2019.
System and
Lying.
behaved a little bit like the countries that have done the best on this one.
It's important to remember that COVID-19 was only first found in humans a little over 3 months ago. It certainly feels like a lot longer than that, given what we're going through. What stage do you think